This is America's highest rated washing machine according to Consumer Reports. It just won Washer of the Year, barely towering over the other competition. It seems to earn some really high marks, but is the washing machine that we have here actually that good? Well, in today's video, I'm going to test, tear down, and talk about this LG WT8405 and see if it really deserves the #1 rating or if there is an asterisk mark on that #1. I bought this unit from Lowe's.com for $8.99. The video wasn't sponsored by LG or Lowe's or anyone in any way, but I will have links to this washing machine in the comments and descriptions if you think that this was worth it or not, as well as the other washing machines maybe I compare this to in the video as well. If you use the links, it does help the channel allow me to afford buying ridiculous things and testing them on screen. So let's go ahead and get this machine tested and tore down. So what makes this machine #1? Off the bat, it's the largest, highest capacity washing machine that is on the market that has an agitator at 5.3 cubic feet. The only ones larger than this are either front loading or they do not have an agitator, and this one clearly does. Although we'll talk about it more, you can't overstate how much laundry this will actually hold. Most washers I've dealt with tend to run around 4 cubic feet, give or take, so this one will hold about 20 to 25% more laundry and can easily handle huge comforters. According to LG, the tub rests higher on this unit than the other ultra-high cap units on the market that say Samsung or Whirlpool makes, making it easier to pull clothes from the drum as well. It's also really quiet in operation, and energy-efficient claims are also made about this, so there are many things to like about this unit. Price-wise, it comes in at $900, even from the manufacturer at LG.com, so it's only a bit more expensive than the smaller capacity washing machines that are out there. It has 7 modes available, and then there's a custom downloadable option that lets you feature one of about 15 other modes that you can get on the machine versus the lower end models. You also get modifiers on the machine such as turbo wash, deep fill, delay start, and a few extra rinses for your choice. This unit also has the LG Think app, which lets you do a few cool things from your phone, such as run the machine remotely. To start on the washing machine, I do these stain tests, or at least I started doing stain tests to check how the unit washes with such a big tub. I'm using the same type of system test we did in the FF7, so I have multiple shirts with staining with a few different things. We have coffee, ketchup, red wine, motor oil, cranberry juice, tomato sauce, mustard, lipstick, barbecue sauce, and then chocolate sauce. Those are the ones we're using for the test, so 10 different stains. Although the rings were a really hokey idea to keep the stuff contained, I wanted to at least try to have it all in a specific area. I'm letting these stains set into the white shirts for at least 2 days. For most of these tests, we're using a 12-pound load of various clothes that we've gotten from people that forgot to take their clothes out of dryers or washers when they traded them in to us. To start off with, I'm going to try just a basic normal wash test with a heavy soil load. The unit states a 1-hour runtime, which is a little high for units, but for higher volume or front load units, that does sound about right. Once I balance the clothes out, in goes that super stained shirt to the mix. But something new that I have for this video are these Swiss Attest kits. This is what Consumer Reports uses in their tests, as well as New York Times wire cutters, to show off how well the stain removal quality of the washers are. One reason that I remind people to use the links to help me out with the videos on the affiliates is these strips cost $25 each. Not per bag, but each. So this little black bag was over $200. It's a bit much. One other thing that we have used in our other tests is rather than rely on the camera footage, we have my spectrometer. This allows me to look at the stain color before and after the wash. I can't really look at shirt stains prior to the wash with this because they're sticky and not uniform, but with the stain strips you can use, that way we can have a comparison between both. For every test, I'm using the exact same detergent, Tide Pods. I'm putting 2 in each load. Unless I'm packing it down with tons of clothes, then I'll use 3. I'm not saying that these are great or bad in terms of stain removal, but it takes the guesswork and variance out of these tests at least if I use the same thing every time. For the normal wash, I use the same methodology as the front load tests we've done previously. We took the 10 types of stains on each shirt. We can look at any of them at the end result and see how much staining is left for a score. Since every shirt I test has the same stain, then we can compare one machine against the other and come out with a standardized value. And here are the values for the first test. The total score on the shirts for the stains was 279.24. That's an okay but not great score.
but this was without any special modifiers, so the scores should only go down from here theoretically. For the stain strip test, I compared pre and post testing data, and the stain strip score was 117.68. That's the amount of staining faded from the strip. For reference, a perfect score is about 280, so this means about 41.9% of the stains were removed from the test, and that's how we're going to use the stain strips going forward, is a percentage rather than a number value. For test 2, we're doing a deep wash with a deep fill option enabled. Everyone always asks if a machine has a deep fill on it, and this one certainly does. It uses an insane amount of water, about 55 gallons for a 12-pound load. But does the mode actually work good on the washer? And in my opinion, absolutely not. On the tests that we did, at least, this was one of the worst tests we did of all of them. Here is the view of the wash action. It is good, but when it came up to the soil data, it had a stain score of 322.9 on the t-shirt, and on the official $20 stain strip, we only saw about 31.1% of the soil getting removed. It was significantly worse than normal. It also used 54.3 gallons of cold water and 4.1 gallons of hot water, which was a lot of water and nothing to show for it because the machine uses about 20 gallons on a standard load. The next mode I chose was the AI wash system. There are a lot of companies out there touting the benefits of AI wash, but honestly, when it came to this unit, I can't tell you that it did anything. The unit ran for a little bit longer than the normal mode, about 48 minutes instead of about 40, but in the end, it provided a worse stain score than even the normal mode. Although it did quite a bit better than deep wash, it had a score of 296.5, and then on the stain strips, it removed 41.2% of the stains, which was pretty close to the normal wash. When it comes to AI wash, I don't know what is going on here. Some washer brands like Samsung use turbidity sensors to figure out the level of soil in the clothes or the water that's coming from the clothes and adjust based on that to help out stain removal. But when it came to this LG, I didn't see any turbidity sensors on it or anything that would actually involve an AI wash outside of computer programming. But it's very possible I didn't notice this during the teardown phase that we'll get to after a bit. One other question we've had a lot is on bedding. This washer is in fact great on comforters, probably too good actually. It had no problems holding a queen size comforter in it. In fact, I got too excited about the queen size comforter and I threw in 3 large blankets as well, and the unit actually ran pretty fine. But if you ever wondered why they don't suggest to put blankets in a machine, this is why. When it came to the camera footage, the agitator can wrap around the blankets, leaving the comforter less than properly cleaned. But the one thing I do want to speak on off camera that it doesn't show is that the unit ended up unraveling the white blanket and then actually did a pretty decent job on the comforter, but less optimally. The stain strip on this mode got 28.4% clean, which is maybe good for a comforter, but bad if it was considered normal clothing, but that's one advantage of having the stain strips. Later on, I did a separate test with just the comforter, and the results improved a little bit to a stain removal percentage of 31.1%. Over time, we'll try this test with other washing machines and comforters to see what happens if this is a good score or not. Next, let's try a supermassive load. I had to look through my entire building just to find 20 pounds of clothes to do, which this unit should easily handle. Note, the scale says it's about 22 pounds. That's because I included the plastic basket in this, which is 2 pounds. I used 3 Tide Pods here instead of 2, and I decided to try the turbo wash on this load. It puts it at about 90 minutes. One thing that I do want to mention about turbo wash is that it's great for running a load faster, but that doesn't actually mean the clothes will run better. That's because when it comes to stains, having things like a pre-soak or simply a longer cycle will do a better job of removing stains than just throwing a lot of water at a load. And if you look at the agitator, for example, it has textured paddles at the bottom like most impellers, and if you just let the unit run longer, it would work better, but turbo wash always reduces the runtime, so it may not actually help out on super bad stains. But when it came to this ultra heavy 20-pound load, I did 2 tests. The first one was with the turbo wash, and it ran for 1 hour and 30 minutes, and one without, and it ran for 1 hour and 48 minutes on heavy duty. It was with these larger loads we saw our absolute best wash tests of anything I did on this machine, which I thought was really cool. On the stain strips, the first heavy-duty test with the turbo wash removed 41.6% of the stain strip discoloration, but on the second test without the turbo wash, which was just a little bit longer, it removed 45.6% of the staining on the stain strip. For the traditional shirt stain scoring on the unit without turbo wash, we got a score of 238.6, which was the best of all the top loads that I've tried so far up to this point. This was the last test I did primarily with the clothing because I ran out of being able to add more to the machine, but it would have been interesting to throw, say, 22 or 24 pounds in the machine. It could have handled it. One thing that I do want to mention though in the video is the dryer. I don't have the matching dryer, so I used a Speed Queen DC5 in every test, and I gotta say, this test was dreadful on the dryer. It absolutely packed into the dryer, and if you plan on buying this machine, you want to absolutely buy a matching dryer or at least one with the same capacity, because the drum on the Speed Queen wasn't big enough to handle the comforter or the 18 to 20 pounds of clothes, and it led to really long drying times. But all these tests go without saying that we need to compare it to something. The only unit I had to really compare in this specific video was a high-efficiency Samsung WA40A3005. This one's rated at the bottom of Consumer Reports with a score of 50, so it would be ironic if it washed better, right? With a smaller tub, though, it's definitely harder to get a 12-pound load in the Samsung. The UI is definitely a downgrade from the LG, but this is not a review of the Samsung washer, just a stain comparison. I did 2 loads with the 12-pound test load, one on normal and another on heavy duty with the Samsung, and I wasn't kind of expecting it, but the Samsung had some interesting results on the stain removals. On the normal load, the shirt had a stain score of 231, which was better than any other LG test. And then when it came to the heavy duty, we had a stain removal score of 207. However, when it came to the stain strip test, it did not fare as well. It removed 30.2% on heavy duty and 27.1% on normal, so the stain strip disagreed with the shirt. I also tried the comforter with a stain strip, and the Samsung actually ran into unbalancing issues, which we absolutely did not have with the LG. I had to rebalance the load twice before it was a sopping mess to dry. The stain removal strip ended up with a score of 37.8%, which was by far the best comforter score we had, but it comes with the asterisk of the unbalanced situation, which may have caused the machine to run a little bit longer, and that's one of the challenges of rating washing machines. Overall, the Samsung scores were mixed a little bit. The stain strip tests for the normal load of clothes were not as good, and actually in legality, you're supposed to use 2 or 3 stain strips per load according to government standards, but at $20 each, I cannot afford that, but you can see why it would be useful because these stain strips performed way worse on the Samsung, while the shirts were better on average. And if you combine both data sets, though, the LG would actually come out just a slight bit on top. I would argue that potentially the LG did that better job of mixing, but we're going to actually run the same battery of test on a Speed Queen TC5 soon. I also did a shirt test on the TC5 already in a live stream that was done prior to finishing this video, and these are the values that we came up with on a TC5 in one mode. So you can see that it didn't do that much better, but we got a lot more tests to do, and you need to make sure to stay tuned for that video. Next, let's tear the unit down to have a look at some of the features on the inside, as well as if this unit should be reliable or not. LG generally has had a favorable view among technicians for reliability, although if you look really hard enough, it looks a lot like a Samsung. Behind the control top, there is not much to see other than the combo control board and interface. Doing a component level analysis, the small capacitors are all Nichia capacitors, which are the gold standard on the market, which is great. However, the large ones are Mecon capacitors. The Nichia capacitors are rated for about 8,000 to 10,000 hours on average. The Mecon MSH are spec'd only for 3,000 hours, and that company does offer a longer life capacitor that LG did not put in this. I don't know why. The relays are from Chinese brands like Hongfa, among others, which is a typical relay provider that many brands use on the market. Samsung uses them, and I think even Whirlpool does as well. Overall, the board electronics have some good parts and some mediocre ones, but LG generally has a good track record with electronics, but they are not the best on the market. Now, this is one of the super interesting parts of the teardown, and this is my favorite component that I'm going to show you. It's a complete shame that no other unit on the market I've seen does this. Remember the balancing issue that we had on the Samsung? The suspension rod system in this washer is a beast. If you look top down with the lid off, each of these standard suspension rods have a miniature shock absorber on them. These are really cool, and they would go a long way to help ensure that the unit would never ever go off balance. Other brands have tried other solutions, like using much cheaper rubber straps or other devices to hold onto the rod. This is the first one that I've seen since a Whirlpool Calypso from 2004 that had suspension on a top load. Getting these struts out would be somewhat of a pain with the tooling that I don't have on me, so I'm not going to remove them, but hopefully you get an idea on the video on how awesome these things are, even though they're miniature compared to what you would see in a front loader. Every washer should have this. It would solve a lot of problems, I think. Next, let's look at the stator system underneath. This unit is a direct drive system, which in general I like because they're pretty reliable. However, since it is a top load, there are some caveats to my approval, and I want to show you those real quick as we dive deeper into the system. I'm sure this comes as obvious to others, but I find it interesting that there's a shift actuating system under the unit. I mean, it makes sense that you have to have different gearing for the whole basket spin versus the agitate, but I think this is a point of failure potentially. I'm not going to say it's going to fail soon, but it is interesting that's nearly identical to how GE has made their top load washer actuator system, and we sell a lot of those at our store. For reference, here's a much cheaper LG WT8105. It's an identical system underneath, although I suspect the motor may not be as good on this lower end LG as the 8405, but in a way I think that this kind of tells you how good the WT6105 is, and it may be overvalued given the fact that that unit's $300 to $400 cheaper than this model. Finally, with the motor out of the way, there is the drain pump. It is a 42-volt DC pump. When it comes to AC versus DC, I would tell you their music's awful, but when it comes to pumps, DC tends to run much quieter than AC. When I was at ASTI 2025, I asked one of the major factory servicers that uses DC pumps what the benefit was, and they said that from their experience, DC pumps tend to be more durable, so that is definitely a win, and they are whisper quiet. Although that does mean finding a third-party replacement pump is going to be very difficult for some time, as I've never seen third-party or non-OEM DC pumps yet.
I just got done putting this unit back together, and we've run about a dozen loads of laundry through the machine. What is the verdict on the #1 washing machine in America? I don't know. Maybe I'm jaded, but this really doesn't feel like washer of the year to me. On paper, I think there is a lot to like about this washing machine, but when it came down to it, the whole point of a washing machine is the wash performance, and I did not find, at least in these tests so far, that they were that great. It handled every size load very well, which is a big plus. But when it came to our internal stain tests, they came back, in my opinion, with mediocre results. But I'm also basing this off the fact that the previous tests we've done mostly has been on front loads. We've had a few top loads here and there. Maybe it's just that the HE agitator systems are not that great by comparison to either your non-HE or your wash plate units, but especially front loads. It could also be that I'm just wrong and major top load washing machines are all the same and they're not as good as front loaders on wash quality. But next up, we do have a TC5 from Speed Queen, which may be ahead of it in terms of wash quality, at least in initial tests, but we'll find out that in the next video. Make sure to watch the TC5 video when I have it come out, because this is only the first of many top load videos that we're going to do over the years, so my opinions could change over time, so take everything I say again with a grain of salt. I will say the one thing that I didn't like about this was the fact that it didn't have a pre-soak option. I think that this may be part of the culprit in the stain tests that at least we did here at our store. Proper pre-treatment of stains would be a huge benefit to you. If you can figure out the stains, there's a lot of things to like on this machine. There's no doubt that the stabilization system in this is the best that any top loader machine has on the market. The direct drive motor in our tests was very quiet by comparison to a lot of the other machines that we've done, and this also has probably the highest spin speed of any top loader that we've seen at 950 RPM. If energy efficiency matters, this will do a great job of spin drying your clothes instead of having to do everything on the dryer side, which would lead to a longer lifespan on your dryer. The water usage in this unit was pretty customizable between the various options that we had, and the interesting pattern we saw when it came to the soil removal was that normal and heavy duty without modifiers ended up working quite well. The deep wash was crap on this, which I was really surprised at, but it used little water and got pretty good results. And I wonder if that's something that we'll see from other washing machines going forward. Maybe more water works better on other machines, not just this. Reliability-wise, I don't think this system has too many major failure points, other than, in my opinion, the clutch system. We've seen other brands have issues with their clutch system, because this really reminds me of what GE has, and I've done some videos on them. Whirlpool has a clutch system in their VMAX washer that has tons of problems. I think this is better than that, but I see no reason that this washing machine shouldn't last between 7 and 10 years, maybe even more if you take care of it good. The lock system inside the door, the clutch, and then the drain pump system are possible failure points, but they kind of are on most washing machines, and I don't think they'll be too expensive or difficult to replace, because I was able to access all of them quite easily on this machine. The fact that the balancing system is so robust on this, I think that that means that the gear case system itself, which is the most expensive part of this, should actually be very long lasting compared to the other designs on the market that just have the rods and no extra stabilization system, which is really, really great, that I think every manufacturer should start to consider having. If you factor all of these things in together, the huge capacity, the well-engineered design, and the consumption and extraction technologies, the lifetime cost of ownership on this looks to be very good for the initial price of about $900. And when it comes to like the wash quality, I wish I had more time to work with this system to learn the ins and outs. And this system does have AI in it, so it would also learn the laundry and know how to run it better, faster, easier. But the problem that we have with the videos on this channel is that, well, I have the queen right here and I need to do some tests with her soon. Would I recommend the LG WT84 if you needed the incredible washing capacity of this to wash super large comforters or just one-shot really large daily loads? I think it makes sense. But in hindsight, when doing this review, I really felt like I should have got the one without the agitator. I think it could have done a better job mixing and cleaning the clothes, as LG's strength typically has been with a wash plate instead of an agitator. Agitators are a pretty new thing for LG to deal with. Or I feel like I could have gone with a smaller drum that would have allowed for a better surface area in which for the unit to agitate and scrub the clothes clean, especially if there are other LGs on the market that have pre-soak or other tactics you could use to get the tough stains out, because this one has a lot of options, but then it kind of doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to pre-treatment and pre-wash and things like that. Honestly, working on this made me feel like I was more interested in LG's cheaper offerings like the WT6105, which is around $500, or the 7150, which is around $700 to $750. They're essentially the same technology in these at a lower price. Remember that I will have that link for this machine and the others that I've talked about a little bit in this video. Hopefully this gave you some insights on the system, if it's right for you. My opinion is that there's probably other LG versions on the market that will make a little bit more sense than this, but ultimately I think the technology that LG used in this is great. It just needs a few tweaks that I think LG may have on the market in other models. So I think that in the end, this could be a good washing machine for certain use cases, maybe not for everyone, but I think LG is a pretty darn good manufacturer. Generally, they're quite reliable and consumer satisfaction on their machines is good, so that makes sense. But is this really Consumer Reports' #1 washing machine? I don't know why it is, but then again, I don't really care about the noise quality being the most important. I want it to just to wash and to work. But maybe you don't. Have a great day.